Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And it's a lot happening in and around the nation and definitely around the way in these parts of Detroit and Michigan throughout. And you probably have been flooded with so much in the mail, so many text messages, so many phone calls, all talking about the urgency of voting. Every time it's a presidential election season, it is the most important election of our lifetime that's put before us from all sides. And I know a lot of people that definitely support Detroit is different are feeling that way. And a lot of the groundswell of Detroit is different is always rooted in the city of Detroit from people that walk in the city of Detroit, add to the community of Detroit. The culture, creativity, Detroit is different. And hence, with that, that definitely connects us to some people that are definitely looking to politically change things in and around the city of Detroit. So it's rare, but it does happen that different people running for office end up on Detroit is different. As open as this is a platform, some people are open to a lot of the thought processes that I give in these different discussions because it's always going to go into the root of how a person definitely got grounded in Detroit. And this person is someone that has helped myself, my community, and my family personally from a legal sphere, heck of a legal mind, and advocated for so many different things. You all should know her, and you all should have definitely seen her in community because for so long, this has, you know, been one of the things that she's done in standing with community as an attorney when many will not, because standing with community means, it's not going to be the I guess the lawsuit settlements of getting Lamborghinis and ads like a lot of attorneys get are pursuing. It's going to be probably saying we ain't got no budget, but we've been wronged. And when people have been wronged and they ain't got no budget, sadly, for what has been wrong too, this has been someone they've reached out to. Tonya Myers Phillips, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today? Thanks for having me.
Good, good. I wanted to give a grand opening as I know a lot of the people that definitely have supported you in your campaign and just your work throughout for a long time are people that check for Detroit is different. I applaud all of you all checking for Detroit is different as well. And you've helped so many people, like including my family and others,
Mhm.
through some of the toughest times, navigating things when it comes to a lot in property.
Yeah.
Property in Detroit has been a big to do almost your whole legal
Yes.
career,
Yes.
which we met years ago, like some starting some of your legal career, and it starts there. And you're advocating for the people. A lot
That's
of
right.
people that work in real estate law and know a lot about development are usually on the side of the corporate interests
Mhm.
and not the public interest. And different things like the community benefits agreement that is standard in the city of Detroit now. You were one of the attorneys fighting for that, stood right next to a lot of organizers on behalf of that. Shout out to the Detroit People's Platform and
Shout
many
out.
others. Um, and getting the winds of change. So now when developments happen in the city of Detroit over a certain threshold, they must have a community benefits agreement.
That's right. That's
That
right.
was work of you. Other work of you aligning in that is so many different developments that have been imposed on communities.
Mhm.
Communities are already so suppressed as we look at the landscape of what Detroit is. Um, and just thriving. Similar to my community that dealt with a lawsuit from a development that came here and it sued over like 300 of my neighbors.
I
Y'all can check
remember.
the archives of
Yep.
Detroit is different. It's called Sued Last Summer. So if you Google Sued Last Summer, you all will see what that was. And you were the attorney that
That's right.
took on that case, helping my community, helping my family. And that was a huge learning situation.
Mhm.
Um, and so many cases like that, just finding out about that, learning that that's so prevalent in throughout Detroit, probably most of urban America, probably a lot of where black and brown people live, where developments are just looked at as the term pioneering and things. So I've been
Yes.
talking for a whole lot. It's been 5 minutes.
Good.
We didn't even introduce. You're running for state representative from this. Why are you running for state representative?
Well, like you, I am a native Detroiter, born and raised here, and I mean, we've seen a lot of things, haven't we,
Mhm,
in terms of how our city has been, how the people of our city have been treated, how our laws and systems impact our communities and neighborhoods. And the long and short of it is, I'm running because I want to continue my advocacy work at a statewide level, and I want to uh, be a part of this movement to change inequitable laws and change systems. And I want to be one of the 110 representatives at the table, being able to make those decisions and cast those votes and influence our laws and systems and policies in a more direct way. And one of the things that I have on my campaign literature, my tagline on the literature and website, and what it all boils down to for me is fighting for us.
mhm,
Black people, brown people, poor people, working class people. There are a lot of well-paid lobbyists and Lansing special interest forces that are working for these large corporations,
mhm.
but we don't have. Now, I don't want to disparage the good work of a lot of organizations that are on the ground that are doing what they do very well. We can shout out a lot of them today, but we need more elected officials that are going to fight, not go along and go with the flow, but are going to fight for our communities right here in Detroit and fight for our people. So that's what I want. That's what I want to do. Changing laws, changing policies, changing systems. That's what it's all about for me.
Okay, and with that, changing laws, changing policies, changing systems.
Yes,
Uh, that can be a lot, especially
it
from the
is.
seat of any political figure, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely from state rep, and we'll unpack a little bit
Yes.
more about that. But for that,
Yeah.
what does steps like that, just from the outside of the run, as an attorney that has
Mhm.
seen a lot of community advocacy, activism,
Yeah.
community actions take place,
Yes.
um, what role and what support do you feel like, from just the outside in, a state representative could provide in some of these fights, especially when it comes to land that
Mm.
seems to be more on the side of corporate interests, given
Yeah.
tax subsidies, given tax money itself, given considerations,
Yes.
and residents and community members that have been there just end up displaced.
Yeah.
What role could a state representative play in things like that?
Well, there are a couple of things that can happen. So
Mhm,
one thing that immediately came to mind was an interaction from our I had with our dear friend, the late and the great Isaac Robinson.
mhm,
So when he was state representative in this the district that I'm running for right now,
mhm,
he used his the role of his office and his platform to stand with community members to advocate for and demand a private community benefits agreement from a developer that was, just kind of came in from out of town, setting up shop and thinking they knew best and didn't really want to consult with the community about anything yet, request these public benefits. So at that time, we reached out to Rep. Robinson and he stood with community. He stood with us out front, he stood with us behind the scenes, and he helped us negotiate and get the first private community benefits agreement in the city of Detroit, at least the first
mhm,
that I've known of anyway. So that was, he used his role, he used his influence, he used his measure of power in order to influence that
mhm,
particular outcome and get a tangible agreement. And I'll always be appreciative and grateful for being able to work with him during that process. So that's one way you can use your voice directly to stand with community and advocate with them in these fights and these battles. Another way, again, looking at you are a lawmaker, you're a legislator, looking at our laws, and perhaps it's time for us to do some things differently. Right now in Lansing, there's a huge conversation going on about economic development and incentives. It's called the SOAR fund, or this package of bills where originally there were hundreds of millions of dollars set aside for business incentives, essentially. But in back and forth, there are negotiations with House representatives and with senators. Now the package still hasn't passed, but it's looking much different than it did when it was originally introduced. Now the conversation is not just about um, same old, let's throw a whole bunch of money at corporations and expect it to trickle on down to us. Now that particular package includes incentives for or requirements for affordable housing, transportation, environmental justice measures, and who knows what it'll look like when it's finally passed. But the conversation has expanded for a form of community benefits on a statewide level, and that's because community members and legislative representatives have been working together to push back. And before that bill passes, if it passes, I don't know, but if it passes, a state rep is certainly very influential in making sure that the language is equitable, right?
Mhm.
And that what we put into law is something that directly benefits our community members and all Michiganders, and it's not, for lack of a better word, it's not just a pass through of private money, public money for private interests. You know what I mean? So a state representative has a lot. It's not just up to them. It's not an executive action. You do have to work and hustle and kind of persuade your colleagues to come along with you as well in that final vote count. You can work with community members to get that done. But those representatives, they're in the room. They're taking the vote, whether it's going to be something that we can be proud of, that will be a benefit to our communities now, that will make sure that our public libraries and our schools are funded and we actually, are setting up investment into our communities for the future, or whether we'll continue this very extractive model where we're taking care of big corporate first and, we may or may not get something in return, something that can be measured, direct, and tangible. So I think in short, there are a lot of ways a state representative can show up. Most of the time, it's not your sole decision, again, because it's not an executive action per se, but whether you decide to show up and support and advocate with your community, whether you are advocating for changes in laws that are going forth, whether you are voting for or against some of these large deals, that can certainly make a difference. And I've been doing quite a bit, not being elected to office. So I expect to just continue doing what I've done and more, being able to serve in that position in one more week. Knock on
So
wood there.
so so this will be days away when this
Yeah.
when this is posted.
Mhm,
So you'll have days
mhm,
to support your run.
mhm.
And let's get into your Detroit story.
Alright.
But even before we go there, what
Mhm.
district?
7.
So District 7, say the boundary
Yes.
so people know on the map
Yes,
because
yes.
sometimes people may not go or know or pull out
Right,
their registration card to know where
right.
they're at. Can you find your registration card? I'm talking to the audience. I know where mine is, but you may not know because a lot of maps have changed.
Yes.
Hence, this kind of goes into census counting and also it goes into who's in office and how the maps are drawn and how districts are drawn. Some work that a lot of people were saying, like, yo, this has a lot to do with things.
Right,
So,
right.
so where are the boundaries?
So I'll describe it to you roughly by neighborhood because it
Mhm.
takes a lot of twists and turns, and then I'll share with the listeners and viewers where you can find the latest and the greatest map. So, roughly, State House District 7 includes the entire city of Highland Park, the entire city of Hamtramck. It includes the central city of Detroit. So, that's roughly the New Center area, Virginia Park area over by Henry Ford. Close to Boston Edison, roughly going back towards Highland Park, and it goes towards the northeast side of the city of Detroit. And you can think of 94 as a very, very rough boundary, so to speak. So major landmarks would be Wayne County Community College, the Detroit City Airport, and if you're getting up towards Buddy's Pizza, you're getting towards the most kind of the more eastern part of the district there. So that's a very rough outline that you can visualize in terms of
Mhm.
neighborhoods. And if you go to the Michigan Redistricting Committee site, they have the latest maps that were approved by the court. So this is the Motown Sound map, something like that with
Mhm.
Motown. But this is State House District 7. So roughly Central Detroit, Northeast Detroit, Highland Park, Hamtramck. It's one of the most diverse areas, I would say, in the state of Michigan, right
Mhm.
here, the district I'm seeking to represent.
Definitely,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
So now we can get classic Detroit is different.
Yes.
Your people, are you first, second, third generation Detroit? When did your family make
Yes.
its way to Detroit?
Number 2,
Okay, second
second generation.
generation.
Yes.
Okay, from where?
South Carolina, Southern roots.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, South Carolina. It's not a lot of Detroiters from South
Yeah,
Carolina.
little
Uh,
bitty small towns. I love it.
what's the name?
Bennettsville.
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 Bennettsville, South
Yes.
Carolina. Whereabouts is that on the map?
Kind of central South,
Mhm.
closer to North, not far from the border of North Carolina.
Okay.
In Effingham. So my mom's from Bennettsville. My mother's side is from Bennettsville.
Mhm.
And my father's side is from Effingham. And Effingham is kind of not far from Florence. That's the more major city.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So from South Carolina, and if you're second generation, so they made their way here for
That's right.
you. What brought them up?
I guess young people-ness. I
Mhm.
don't know. But my Aunt Chris, who's deceased now,
Mhm.
rest in peace, rest in heaven, Aunt Chris. My mother came up to be with her older sister,
Okay.
just young lady living life, moving
Mhm.
from the, southern states.
So
So
your auntie was just like, "I love that Marvin Gaye. I gotta go up to the city where he's singing from."
right. So my aunt came with her husband, right?
Okay.
He came for employment.
Okay.
My mom, little sis, followed big sis.
Mhm.
My dad followed his girl. And
Okay.
here we
So
go.
so
Right.
yeah. So your dad
Like,
what? It was like a Motown record for real. It's like, I
right,
gotta
right.
follow my lady to the big
That's right.
city. And he was like,
Not gonna let her go.
them city guys going, yeah, I know. I
Right.
heard about them Detroit guys.
That's right.
Yeah. It's like he was like,
That's right. Here comes Tonya.
All right.
Yes. Born in Detroit.
So whereabouts? What side of town did they live when they first got here?
West side.
West side.
Northwest side. Yes.
Northwest. And I'm
Near
guessing
Outer Drive.
okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Outer Drive, 96-ish area. Yeah.
What 96 Outer Drive? I think of
Yeah.
Brightmoor when I think of that community.
Very close, right on the outskirts there. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And did they stay there even when you were born, or did they move around front when you were born?
Yeah, so I was born in a little apartment over there,
Okay.
and I guess about two-ish, Tyler-ish, then they
Mhm.
moved into a house.
Okay.
Again, Northwest side.
Oh, so
Yeah,
stayed in
yeah.
that same community.
Coming on the back, little back towards Southfield Freeway and Plymouth area.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think of starters when I think of that neighborhood.
Starters would be no, it wasn't starters back then. Let's just
It
say
was
that, okay?
it was probably a whole different
It was different.
community
It was
that they were
different.
thinking. It's like
That
Herman
Kmart was
Gardens.
there.
Oh, the
Yes.
Kmart. Yeah, that
Yes.
was that. Now that's a big
Right.
church. Yeah, that was a huge Kmart. Now
The
that I
big
think about it.
Kmart, yes.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So that neighborhood.
Yeah.
What was it? What do you remember like
Yeah.
in that neighborhood growing up?
Well, it had its ups and downs, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it definitely had its fair share of, you know, the underground economy, right?
Yeah,
Just leave it like that,
black collar.
okay?
The black collar economy
We'll just
also, I'm
yeah,
guessing, like in the
just leave it
era,
like that.
very prevalent throughout.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, like your parents, what were they doing?
Working,
Okay. Your
working.
mom and dad, what did your mom do? What did your dad do?
By that time, they'd went their separate ways,
Mhm.
by the time, I was in
You're in
elementary
there.
school.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So pretty much, most of my conscious memory, it
Mhm.
was just us 3 girls. My mom, my
Ah,
sister, and I. Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
All right. Older
yeah.
or younger?
I'm the oldest.
Okay. What was that
Yes.
like being a big sister?
It was nice. It was
Mhm.
nice. I love my little sister,
Mhm.
I think sometime I probably treated her like a doll baby, I
Mhm.
guess. When you're younger, 4 years can be a bit of a spread, right?
Mhm.
When you're younger, now we're just in the same boat.
Yeah, 4 years might
Right.
as well be like a whole like y'all not even
Right.
in school together.
Right. Right. Um,
Mhm.
I think I got signed up for a number of fights,
Mhm.
You know how we used to do back then. I got
Okay.
a big sister, right?
Oh,
So
man. Hey, you
I
just
got signed up,
you
right?
walking through the neighborhood, and the
Right.
next thing you know, it's like, "Oh, here we go."
Right. Right.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, but I
So
liked it. Yeah.
so,
Mhm.
so that what school well, I guess with there, I would say, what was your mom doing? What was your mom doing for work?
Yeah.
How did that influence,
Yeah.
where you was at?
Yeah. Ooh, like I gotta go back here. Let's see. Initially, she was a city of Detroit worker.
So she worked for the city.
Yes, yes,
Okay. How
way
did she
back in
like
those
working for the
days.
city?
Ooh-wee.
She was one of them people that came home like, oh, they can't get it right.
Good. It's good and bad, right?
Mhm,
I was always an inquisitive child, so I probably listened to more conversations than
mhm.
anybody was aware of,
So
right?
your awareness of local
Yes.
government started at an early
I
age.
was eavesdropping on the grown folks' conversation, right?
Okay.
Thought I was playing, I was listening.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I mean, it was some things that, different dramas, different controversies, one of my I guess I can turn it into a positive story. One of my earliest kind of conscious
Memories.
thoughts or memories about a union, like,
Mm,
what is a union? You know, I knew that some things happened at work against my mom that weren't fair,
mhm,
and I remember now, of course, I know what a union is, I'm a member of a union, but I'm,
mhm.
you know, talking about how I viewed it as a child. I had a recollection, I was understanding and listening that something happened, people were bothering her and harassing her at work,
Mm.
and she went to her union, and her union represented her,
Wow.
and she won a claim. Her union
Okay.
helped her out there.
There you
So from
go.
an early age, I was like, "Okay, somebody was messing with my mom. She went to the union helped her. That helped us get a little more,
Something,
security
whatever
around
that was. Yeah.
around here. So from an early age, yeah, she worked for the city of Detroit.
Mhm.
She was a union member, she did clerical work, nothing, I won't say nothing fancy. That was probably some of the hardest work it is,
Yeah.
she,
Depending upon what office you're
yeah,
in and
she
who you
was,
know.
at
Um,
the EMS department, if I
mm.
remember correctly.
Oh,
So she
yeah, she
probably went through
was
a lot
yeah.
more stress than I could even
Yeah, I was gonna imagine.
imagine.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's gotta be
yes,
heavy.
yeah.
So
And
so
she
during
was working
so during that
all the
time, did you
time.
go to school in that neighborhood?
Only briefly,
Okay.
only briefly. I went to, the local elementary school only for 1st grade,
Mhm,
really, and, Detroit still has kind of its magnet school system,
mhm.
but, I remember, again, listening to those conversations and putting 2 and 2 together, I was like, "This school isn't, it's not a good school." I
Yep.
heard words like that, and we wanna try and get Tonya into another school, and, yeah, so after pretty much 2nd grade and beyond, I always went to school in Detroit in public schools, but never went to a neighborhood school after that
Okay.
anymore.
What school did you go to?
Yeah. So, I ended up going to Prairie Elementary School, my
Mhm.
2nd school, which doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
Then I went to Whitney Young Middle School, which
Okay.
also doesn't exist anymore.
Alright.
Right.
What was Whitney Young like for you?
I liked it.
Okay.
I guess my little first venture into the East Side.
Mhm,
It was small, a very, very tiny school,
mhm,
and it shared the building with Duffield. So
mhm.
Whitney Young Middle was on one side, and Duffield Elementary was on the other side, and it was located in the historic Black Bottom area.
Mhm.
So again, I'm beginning to hear people talk about Black Bottom. I'm like, what's Black Bottom? What's going on with that? And just these little seeds, beginning to form and beginning to kind of understand,
As a child.
as a child, kind of
Mhm,
our culture. And yeah, it's not just all bad and dumping on Detroit.
mhm.
So that school in that historic area, I began to learn a lot. I was a latchkey kid. I said
Mm.
she was a single mom. She had to work.
Mhm.
So my sister and I went to this little latchkey program that was located in the school. And
Okay.
yeah, and I was kind of like a little helper or whatever and help watch the kids. And I guess I did a good job. And the lady ended up giving me a free trip to Disney World. I can't believe
Wow, for
that.
real? Okay,
I was just helping out, right?
how old were you when you
I
went to
was
Disney
like, I
World?
was in 8th grade.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
that had to be
got a
pretty
little
big.
scholarship. Oh, you couldn't tell me
That had to be
anything. I was
big.
so excited. It was
Okay.
amazing.
Alright, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kicking it with Mickey and Minnie in 8th grade
Pretty much.
right before high school.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you come back
Yes.
ready for, whatever's going to happen in high school. What high school you go
Yes.
to?
Renaissance High School.
Okay, you went to
Yes.
Renaissance.
Go
Alright.
Phoenix. Yeah.
And what was Renaissance like? I'm guessing this
Yeah.
is like, as they call it, the old building.
The little
So,
tiny old building,
so
right?
what was Renaissance like for you?
Oh, I loved it.
Mhm,
I did. I mean, it was small,
mhm,
right? Um, but I liked it. I mean, you had an opportunity to really develop friendships and relationships, and
mhm,
I'm still cool with a lot of my Phoenix fam today.
mm.
Um, it was just, everybody was not everybody, but the culture of the school was like we love to learn, we were kind of competitive, but nice, friendly. I did sports,
Mhm.
loved it.
What did you play?
I had one little season in JV basketball, and
Okay.
it was
Alright, that's
like,
cool.
that's not my thing. Okay.
Okay.
But that helped me find what I was really passionate about, and that was running.
Hmm,
So I did cross country and track. So
okay.
those were my sports. And I was also in the band, the
Hmm.
concert band, and the pep band. I was in a lot of stuff.
So you did a
Yeah.
lot of activities. What do you
Oh,
think
yeah. I was
was
busybody from always.
what do
So,
you think connected you to, like, that full high
mhm,
school experience? I
yeah.
know when I was in high school, I recognized my senior year, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Damn, I ain't in nothing, and I wanna be in my yearbook more." So I was just
Right.
signing up for anything just to be, like, in the
Right.
yearbook picture, like it's like, I don't even know what this is, but yeah,
Right.
whatever. Yeah, the debate team, let's do it. The
Put me
pep
in there.
club, come on, let's do it.
Take my
The
picture.
yearbook team, come on, let's do it.
Right.
It's like, I'm about to be in this,
Right.
But you were actually one of the people in it.
Yeah.
I was not. I was there
Yeah.
by representation.
What school did
I
you
was
go to?
at Northwestern. So
Okay, okay.
so what connected you to so many activities?
Hmm. I think, well, one, my mom said I had to do stuff, that's for sure.
Okay, so mama was like, "Hey,
I can't
you
take all
doing
the
it."
credit. Yeah.
Okay.
So one, she's like, "Well, you're gonna sign up for activities for sure." And music had to be one of them. So I admit that wasn't my first choice.
What did you play?
The flute.
Mm,
The flute.
okay.
I
Did you make
loved
the
it.
flute choice or was it something
No.
else you wanted to play?
No. No. I had to be different from an early age. I wanted to play the
Okay.
harp.
Ah,
I
the harp
wanted
is it's an expensive instrument for anybody that's a
Yes.
parent
Yes.
that knows, and
Yes.
then, like, lugging the harp,
Yes.
it's a lot of care that goes on with harpists.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, no, I didn't get a harp,
Mhm.
We went to the music store, and mom was like, "Okay, what do you want?" I'm like, "I wanna play the harp. If I have to go to the band, I wanna play the harp." Looked
Mhm.
around, was like,
And then your mom walked over to that harp,
"Available instruments. Okay,
and
I'll
it's
take
like,
the
"Alright,
flute.
let's get that."
I'll take
Okay.
that flute. Fine. Can't do the
Alright.
harp." But I ended up loving it. I really
Mm,
did. And, it was one of those things on the list of one day I'll come back to it. But at
okay.
the time, I really enjoyed it,
Okay. So
Yeah.
you just like the playing of the music, or was it more the camaraderie of being in the band? What was it?
It was the sound.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's just really peaceful, relaxing. It's like it could take you to a different place, a different world, especially when you learn how to read, sheet music and you can go back and look at the stuff that was written like 100 years ago and you're playing it, and I don't know, it kind of takes you to a different place. It's just really relaxing, really peaceful. Um, I don't know, kind of amazing. So
So
I
it's the
enjoyed it.
instrument and the
Yeah.
sound itself was what you appreciated. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool. So did you
Yeah.
walk in
Yeah.
after a while and tell your mom, "Nah, you was right. I do like this."
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
did.
Way
Yeah.
after, like, that's for
Right.
parents to know. Sometimes you know. Sometimes you know
Sometimes you just gotta
parents.
stick with your gut. I'm in that situation now. Like, "You'll thank me later, son. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it."
exactly.
Right.
It's like, yeah,
Right.
it's like, "Oh, no."
Right.
It's like, but then it's like,
She was
"Yeah, you
right.
was right. You was right."
Yeah, I
So
loved it. Mhm.
so so Renaissance there. After
Mhm.
Renaissance, where do you go?
Michigan.
U of M. A lot
Yeah.
of people make that jump
Yeah.
to U of M from
Yeah.
Renaissance.
Yeah.
Okay, what era U of M is this? We're talking like um early 90s, mid 90s, late
Mid
90s.
Mid-90s.
Okay,
Yes.
mid 90s. So
Wonderful
this
time.
is like Fab Five-ish is there and
Yes.
that energy and that feel.
Yes.
What was it like being on Ann Arbor's
Yeah.
campus? around there for you?
Yeah. Again, I mean, I loved it. It was like a whole different world for me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've done just a little travel outside of Detroit, but I mean, not much, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, we didn't have that much money to spare. We could go
Mhm.
on these big exotic vacations every year, you know. It was mostly traveling to see family, that kind of
So,
thing,
down
right?
to Bennettsville?
Down to South Carolina,
Yep.
maybe
And
hit DC, so
okay.
come on back to Detroit. That was kind
Mhm.
of our loop, right? So, even though Ann Arbor is not far away, it was really, um, eye-opening and just fun to meet people
Mhm.
from all over the country, really, and to have this little measure of independence in my little cubicle of a room. I don't know, you know,
Okay.
learned a lot. You just kind of I mean, college can be a fun time. You just really start to learn more, about yourself, more about the world around you. Um, so, I mean, it was a good time for me. Some of my other issues came with law school when I went to U of M, but undergrad was amazing, honestly, and I really began to, I think, kinda sharpen my advocacy tools as an undergrad. I really started to
Mm.
dig into it. I wouldn't say I was, no, I wouldn't give myself, um I certainly didn't know as much as I do now, right?
Mhm.
But I really was able to spend a lot of time in Detroit, and I started that through the undergraduate research opportunity program.
Expand on what that is.
Yeah, on campus, you call it UROP for short, but
Mhm.
basically it's, hands-on learning, a research learning experience for undergraduate students, and it allowed me to look into this area of kind of community organizing. Really, that was my research focus. I started off in the School of Natural Resources. I wound up in poli sci, but I wanted to kind of have a more hands-on experience.
Okay, before we even go there, how did
Yeah,
you what was the selection in School of Natural Resources? How
yeah,
did you make that selection
yeah.
originally?
Renaissance High School.
Okay.
So one of the clubs I joined was the environmental club. I believe it was, oh, don't give me the line to remember what the name of that club
So the
was, but
club at Renaissance for
yes.
environment. Mhm.
That's right. One of our teachers, Miss Turner, you know, she started this club, and I think I just happened to be in her classroom after school and
Mhm.
um, heard some information about it. I was like, that's interesting. This concept of environmental justice, environment, and just kind of increasing my consciousness and awareness more.
Mhm.
And I was curious. I was like, let me join and see what this is all about. And it began to really pique my curiosity. So, going into U of M, I decided I wanted to go into the School of Natural Resources and focus on environmental justice.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
that's how I
that's where
got
you
there.
were in the
Yeah.
beginning. When
Right.
you get there,
Mhm.
what makes you shift to poli sci?
Ooh, really putting together the politics of it all.
Mhm.
And at that time, I mean, there were different tracks within the School of Natural Resources, and I believe the EJ program is gotten much stronger now. But at that time, you know, I'm trying to consciously make the connection to get back to Detroit, right?
Mm.
And I just felt like I was doing a lot of very technical work, um, more on the environmental sciences side, but I wasn't getting enough policy analysis, and I was hungry for that.
So
Yes.
so within that,
Mhm,
so I'm guessing you're sitting in these circles, you're
mhm,
talking about how to resolve challenges for
mhm,
society,
mhm.
and two things start standing out.
Yeah.
I want to resolve some of these challenges for my community,
Right,
A,
right.
Detroit, and B, instead of gathering a lot of the research and data around it, why if it seems like most of these debates always come back to if this person weren't in office or if this law were to be
Mhm,
changed or if this regulation were to step in or
mhm.
if that were to change, why don't we just go work at that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking there, at least the track I was on, that curriculum is completely different now. But my classes were very technical, so I had a lot of science classes, almost like going into a practitioner's
Mhm,
space, you know, not a policy making
mhm,
space. And so I appreciated that technical knowledge. But again, I'm
Is
not
that where
seeing
your
that.
focus and passion was?
Nope, I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, um, I'm not connecting the dots of how I'm going to take this knowledge back to my community. Our
And
our issues are a little bit more discreet than when I'm learning these classes. So that's where I kind of made the shift to political science.
also,
Mhm,
I think that it's unique that
mhm,
even at that time in that era, you made the connection that I wanna come back to Detroit,
mhm.
because especially then, the thought process is
Get away.
you
Yeah.
wanna get an education and get out, quote, unquote, "the hood" as
Yep.
much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So, basically, that strata of
Mhm,
success,
mhm.
was very prevalent, especially in the
Oh,
Black
yeah.
community. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
"You don't wanna live how I live, you wanna live better than how I live." I mean, it was
Exactly.
encouraged from the elders, it was
Mhm.
encouraged from, rap music, from television,
Exactly.
everything about it was
Exactly.
to be the technically George Jefferson, not
Right.
I mean, it's not even a show that I could
No,
think of that it's
no.
like, okay, empower yourself with
Right.
resources and tools to
Mhm,
give back to community.
mhm.
What was different in you that made that
Mm.
connection to wanna do that?
Well, a couple of things. Like I said, I was in this undergraduate research program, and that allowed me to pair up with a professor at the School of Natural Resources. And originally, he was studying um, the Detroit River and kind of the quality of fish, I guess, and
Mhm,
people trying to get nourishment from the Detroit River and kind of looking at some of the social challenges around that. So I initially started doing that research with him and hanging out at Belle Isle and interviewing people and kind of corresponding with folks, who are doing more sophisticated samples and things like that. And that kind of led into, identify a problem. What about a solution? So, again, this particular professor had a relationship or got introduced to Reverend Wilson over at Tridestone Baptist Church, which doesn't exist anymore.
mm,
But at the time, boy, Reverend Wilson, he was ahead of his time. So
mhm,
he was looking at alternative, kind of alternative food markets, so farmers markets essentially. And he also wanted to have a, what do you call it, like a hydro pond. I think I'm kind of messing up that terminology, but basically be able to have his own fishing operation as
mhm.
well. So looking at these food systems that could be created, controlled, and sustained in the community around his church, right? So again, this was in the 90s, early 90s, and a lot of people were looking at him like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
So, our job in the School of Natural Resources was to kind of work with him and help develop this vision that he wanted to. And the part that I was assigned to work on more was the farmers market and the community garden. And it was just something I mean, I loved it. It just kept drawing me in, you know.
Was it the trait of it, or was it the vision of it, the
Mhm.
practicality? What do you think was the hook that caught you?
All of it. The
Mm,
vision, the practicality, this notion that, community members can create things and you can control things actually. You don't have to rely on, you know
systems.
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
or go way out of your way to go to a kind of, um, grade A or quality A grocery store or whatnot,
mhm.
because we talk about food deserts now, but 90s were, I mean,
Yeah, it
that
was
was a
for those
desert,
that were
okay?
there.
That was a desert,
Yeah.
right? Right.
So
Um,
this work,
mhm.
um, starts kind of then
Yeah,
in seeing that vision, and
mhm,
now you're looking to come back to Detroit. As you're
absolutely.
engaging with some of the people like your
Mhm.
mom, family,
Yeah,
friends saying like, "Nah, I wanna come back to
mhm.
Detroit." What's their response to, "You at Michigan? You about to get a degree? What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
What do they
yeah.
say?
Well, my family and friends have always been supportive,
Okay,
they knew, I mean, that's just me, you know?
okay.
Um, that's
That this is
always
what you're
been
gonna do. So
absolutely. So they've always been supportive, always been in my corner. Now, some of my counselors and advisors, they did urge, like, you might want to go on to Chicago, go to a bigger market, why Detroit? Why now? So outside of my immediate family circle, I can't say that I always got that support. But my family, and my ride or die friends, they've always been in my corner. Absolutely.
So
I'm really thankful for that.
you continue to do this work
Mhm.
as far as the research and everything.
Mhm.
That eventually leads you to graduate from undergrad. And
Yes.
then after undergrad, I know you end up in the law school
That's right.
immediately after, or do you wait?
Yeah,
How do
yeah.
you take that approach towards law school?
Yeah, I took a little break, right? I
Okay.
applied and deferred admission. I wanted to, you
Mhm.
know, school was great, but it was like, yeah,
Let me take a minute.
let me take a minute.
So you
Yeah,
come back to Detroit,
I did.
and I'm guessing
Yeah.
you pick up some of the community organizing work, or where you
Actually, ironically, I didn't.
okay.
Ironically, I didn't. I did receive some advice. I can't say it was the best piece of advice, but you live and learn from everything.
Yeah, I mean, you
So,
gain wisdom, or let's put it like this, I've gained a lot more
you
wisdom
know what?
from decisions that I don't think I should have made
I
than
won't
the
say
decisions I
that.
did make. Even though some of the
Right,
decisions I should not have
right,
made, I pull more off that tree. I mean, even
right,
from
right,
some of the things that I've done, because it's like it sticks
right,
with you more. Or
right.
here's what we say in business: losing money teaches you a whole lot more than making
Doesn't
money
it?
does. All right, so there you go.
So, I just received advice like, well, two things. One, I did get advice like, well, why don't you, just go work for a company.
A big
Try
corporation.
try try business. Just make sure. Just try it. Try business first.
And
In
and
between law school, just make sure. Just try it.
and I
Right.
also want to frame
Mhm.
this in the right context, because I'm
Mhm.
big in the context playing out.
Yeah.
Hence why I usually talk so much during these
Yeah.
interviews, is to contextualize,
Yes.
because I'm putting a person in a framework of time, era, and place.
Mhm.
So I believe that I had a recent interview not too long ago with Evan Daughtry
Mhm.
that is like, I'm an old millennial, or yeah, what
Mhm.
I was born in '82.
All right.
He's born in the early '90s.
Mhm.
So his parents would have been Gen X,
Mhm.
and you would be like,
I'm a Gen X.
I don't know, but no,
That's what
but
I
you're not
think,
like,
right?
you're like either, I don't know whether, like I say, you're a later Gen X, you know what
I'm
I'm
in
saying?
those 70s. I'm in the 70s.
Later.
Yes. Right.
So with that being said, in that era, I believe Generation X has dealt with a reality that just
Mhm.
a lot of other from the baby boomers that were their
Mhm.
parents didn't really see, because the
Mhm.
baby boomers had this concept of like, if you work hard,
Mhm.
you'll be rewarded for it.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of those rewards that those baby boomers received were, I speak this often, but an
Mhm.
externality of other things
Mhm.
connected to America, in the
Yes.
way that America's influence, especially post World War II,
Mhm.
kind of controlled a lot of the colonization that picked up from
Mhm.
Germany, Britain,
Mhm.
France, and then in a lot of ways reset the table in economic markets for those European nations as well. So
Mhm.
America was able to cherry pick
Yeah.
different things for like FDR's New Deal. So, for me, it'd be like my great uncle, but like my great uncle with a third grade
Mhm.
education that
Mhm.
was driving a high low,
Right.
and he was working hard,
Right.
but he was making
Right.
$120,000 a year with a
Yes.
vacation home
Yep.
and a gold watch when he retired,
I remember those.
because
Mhm. Times were
America
different.
had access to all these resources
That's right.
that really were pilfered from a lot of other nations.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
Generation X was the first generation where you have this dissonance between
That's
like
right.
these baby boomers talking Gen X, like, if you just
Right.
work hard, you're gonna get it. And it's like,
I don't
that's
know about
not
that, right. Mhm.
what the realism
Mhm.
is. And then you have like the millennials see like the
Mhm.
Great Recession and everything, but
Mhm.
like, just it was so prevalent of, you climb this corporate ladder. I study a lot
Mhm.
of society through,
Mhm.
like, I collect all these old magazines. So
Right.
like old Black enterprises,
Right.
Ebony's, specifically Black community. And it'd be so many articles about how to climb the corporate ladder.
Yep, that
Uh
was the
how to
conversation.
how to get into the C-suite. You want a
Mhm.
corner office with a big window.
Right.
Like, everything is just so driven in this whole concept. So
Right.
you saying that I want to try a corporate
Right.
way
Right.
versus the person probably watching right now that
Mhm.
would be, 20, 21,
Yeah.
saying that sounds crazy. I just want to be an entrepreneur, which I
Yeah.
think is pushed in for other
Yeah.
reasons, which has other things to explore.
Right.
I just want to share that that's
Well, I
so
appreciate it.
commonplace to
Yeah.
contextualize
Right.
that it's not like, it was everywhere. It's in
It
culture,
was.
it's prevalent,
Right.
so it's understandable
Yeah, so, in 2024, the world is different,
completely.
It's different, the market is different, you have the internet,
Mhm.
right? So, saying, "Hey, I wanna do social justice work," that doesn't sound as bizarre,
It
right?
still
Is
sounds
it
extremely bizarre,
it
but
still is,
not
but
as
as
not
bizarre.
like yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Then it would
yeah,
be what a lot of people
right.
would say.
Yeah.
I wanna be a civil rights attorney,
Mhm.
or I want to work for a probably it would be like I wanna work for a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, not even that. So, the context in which people were giving me advice, and thank you for contextualizing that. It wasn't bad advice back then.
No,
It didn't
it
light my
didn't fit
soul on
you. Yeah,
fire,
it
but I
didn't
was
fit
like,
you.
well, these are people who care about me. They have my best interest at heart. What the heck? Let's give it a try. I
Mhm.
have my admission, locked down for law school. Let's give it a try. Let's see how this next year goes working for a corporation.
And
Right?
hence, that's
Yeah.
the other thing, word of
Mhm.
wisdom. You
Mhm.
did that, and it's
Yeah.
like, "This ain't for me." And
No.
sometimes you gotta
No.
do something to
No.
know, "This
No.
ain't for me."
No, no, I mean, I did, and, I did well, but,
It didn't fit you.
nope, I just came in, did my work, I was good at it, but I found myself kinda hurrying up and looking at the clock like, "When's
Mhm.
it time to go?" So I could, do
Oh,
things that
waking
that
up.
brought me joy. It was easy
Mhm.
work, I could definitely see a more lucrative financial path, but it wasn't
Yeah.
anything I was passionate about,
In late '90s, early
Yeah.
2000s, it's a whole different culture that
Uh-huh.
I know it's gonna sound weird, but,
Mhm.
like, I know because from
Yeah.
my aunties, my
Mhm.
mom, and all of that stuff, that was
Mhm.
a woman
Mhm.
waking up, putting on stockings and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's a
Yeah,
it's a whole
yeah, I
lot,
had to
like, which I don't
put on my
even
little suit.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't even
yeah.
think, like, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like,
Mhm.
today, it's like, "What are you talking about? This patriarchal society?"
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, it
but
was.
that's
Yes.
what was going down
Pretty much.
in the '90s
Pretty
all the
much.
way through really to, like, the
Yes.
mid whatever O's or something,
Mhm.
you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So then
Mhm.
to law school
Right.
with a little bit of
Yes.
taste of that corporate world
A little bit.
in you
Yes.
to know, "Okay, we need to break some
Rearrange
of these
things.
systems."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you come back to
Yeah.
Detroit for that, and
Mhm.
now are you traveling between Ann Arbor and Detroit for law school?
Not really. Not
Okay,
really. I mean, I still spent a lot of time in Detroit, but I did live in Ann Arbor.
at
I
the
did
time.
live on campus,
Mhm,
U of M. Its reputation is well earned, and
mhm.
first year law school,
Heavy.
it is heavy. It is intense,
Mhm.
definitely. So, I mean, for me, it worked best for me to just kind of be there and immerse myself fully into school, you know.
So
Mhm.
so now after law school,
Yeah.
where's your focus at?
Getting back to Detroit as soon as possible.
Once again, back to Detroit,
Absolutely.
and now
Yes.
as an
Yes.
attorney.
That's right.
And what was your take? Because,
Mhm.
a lot of people from the outside have ideas of
Yeah.
attorneys,
Yeah.
whether that be watching endless hours of Law and Order
Right.
or, the thought process is like, oh man,
Yeah.
attorneys got a lot of money, they got time on their
Mm.
hands, they walk in the room, they do
Mhm.
everything they want to do.
Mhm.
Like the idea and the facade of attorney
Mhm.
versus the realism of attorney.
Yeah, that's a rude awakening, certainly.
Hmm.
Because I didn't have any other attorneys in my family or other
Hmm.
people to, I don't know, just kinda give me the lowdown, I it's nothing I mean, I begin to see, different angles, through clerkships, internships, listening to alumni and things like that, but getting back home, I just thought there would be more space for the kinda work that I wanted to do and
Hmm.
be engaged in, and there was not.
Yeah.
No, there was not. So I was very fortunate to I mean, after a lot of looking, I was very fortunate to, receive a fellowship the Millender Fellowship,
Mm,
named after the late um, Bob Millender and
mhm,
that amazing family, to work at the Sugar Law Center.
mm.
And I was like, oh, there's my tribe. I found my people right there.
S
But it's not like, I came out of law school and I just opened you know,
so can you
and saw an abundance of social justice jobs out there. So
so
not
so
in Detroit.
can you share what the Sugar Law Center is and the type of
Yes.
work that Sugar Law does?
Yes. So the Sugar Law Center is a nonprofit law firm, and usually those words don't go together
Mm-mm,
either, right? But pretty much the work that we do, we are concentrate on civil rights, workers' rights, constitutional rights, and our overall mission is to put the interests of people first over
mhm,
property and recognizing that many things about our system and the world that we live in and the society we live in, money comes first, property comes first, and people's well-being needs to fit in between that, you know.
yeah.
And that's harsh to say it like that, but maybe some people would disagree with that. But that is the lens at which, sugar law exists. A lot of times our cases, we, are different than traditional legal services agencies in that we often seek to take impact cases or cases that have the ability to change the law, change the policy, or change a system. And if we can't change it, then certainly we can influence it. Another term that's, kind of coming up a little bit more is the term movement lawyer. And I would say when I started, I didn't necessarily use that term, so to speak, but that is what people are saying now, so some people might understand it better in that context. So it's not new, it always has been. I think we just, sometimes our vocabulary might shift a little bit, but it's not really anything. There's always been movement lawyering. Think about it as moving the law from something just unjust to just, pretty much. So, movement lawyers and lawyers who do this kind of work, work hand in hand with activists and advocates and seeing where are these inequitable laws and systems and how can we strategize and work together to get this change. That might be through policy, that might be through litigation, that might just be doing research and supporting what others are already doing on the ground. But pretty much our client is the community. Our mission is the greater good of the community and changing these systems and policies. So we're the legal eagles behind movement for equity, movement for equality, movement for justice. And that's what sugar law is about pretty much. Yeah.
So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna share my Sugar Law story now. So, and I'm gonna try to make it as short as I
Yeah.
can, and I'll give some context of movement
Okay.
lawyers. So
Mhm.
so let me talk movement lawyer first, then I'll
Yeah.
talk my Sugar Law story.
Alright.
So, in my journey of school, as much as it's like, I hate school. And
Yeah.
also in my journey of life where people have told me that I think I'm an attorney. Shout out attorney Todd Russell Perkins and
Yes.
attorney Anthony Adams and so
Yes,
many others.
Anthony and Todd,
Rest
they're
in peace,
amazing.
Judge
Yes.
Claudia Morcom. Everybody's like, you think you an attorney. But
Yes.
I do have this. When
Mhm.
I'm presented any form of information, I immediately flip it on its
Mhm.
side and try to think of all arguments for
Mhm.
or against
Mhm.
whatever is being presented to me.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily consider that being an attorney. I consider that's how I strengthen my critical thinking skills.
Being a critical thinker.
So
Exactly.
that's how I look at things. So
Mhm.
I'm never, even like, Detroit water is the worst water in the earth. And then the immediately thought process is like, okay, who this is Kari's mind.
Mhm.
Who's making the determinant factors
Mhm.
of what's worst or
Mhm.
good water? Two, how inclusive was the process of how that is determined? Three, when was
Mhm.
this all taken into account
Mhm.
as far as what it is? Four, um, what's the varying argument for it? And then here's a big one. Five, why did they even go through the
Mhm.
intentionality of creating this service in the first place? So
Mhm.
these things all trigger like when I hear information,
Mhm.
just so
Mhm.
that's why people think it's like, you think you like an attorney. It's like, nah, I just have a lot of questions about things. Hence why I got a
As you
podcast,
should.
why I talk so
Yes.
much. Like this is Tanya
Mhm.
knows, like if you meet me,
Mhm.
it's the same thing. I can,
Mhm.
I can have a 5-hour discussion about
Yeah.
why I think Glorilla is so successful right now. You know what I'm saying? So, movement lawyer from my I remember she was real cool too. My white US civics teacher at
Mhm.
Henry Ford Community College,
Okay.
she taught a lesson on Charles Houston. And as much as I've known about the NAACP, no one's ever explained the story to me like this lady did.
Hmm.
And she spoke like this because she was one of those people in a union suit at one point
Mm.
in time,
Mm.
won one hell of a lawsuit because of
Mhm.
some of the precedent from Brown versus Board of
Mhm.
Education. So our country is built on a couple of different things as you talk about
Mhm.
property and business. And this is me thinking
Mhm.
from an entrepreneur. So our our laws are built on a lot in ownership.
That's right, ownership of land.
So
Absolutely.
so it sees the lens
Mhm.
of who owns something already has, for lack of a better term, a upper hand
Right.
in any legal dispute.
That's right.
And the justice system usually it will defend the ownership, whoever has that.
Mhm.
So so I give this lens to say the story of what Charles Houston
Mhm.
presented. So attorney Charles Houston is a mentor to Thurgood Marshall that wins Brown versus Board, but because our country is built in, as they say, based on precedent, meaning like you
Mhm.
have to
Mhm.
have cases that already exist
Mhm.
to verify if this case can be true. You need to have precedent for something and a judgment to be made by a judge, hence the bench. So Charles Houston for years would seek out, as you say, those
Mhm.
impact cases in
Mhm.
certain cities and places where there were no
Mhm.
other options. So a black student would need to be let
Mhm.
into a white classroom. And a lot of these were classrooms were in law schools. And he
Mhm.
built these over like a decade plus.
Takes a long time.
So, like, as he builds enough of these cases and Thurgood Marshall moves forward with the cases, now he has the argument of the precedent to win Brown versus Board. But if you take away Charles Houston,
Mhm. Mhm.
and at the time the NAACP started supporting his work with their legal aid, and it builds the whole premise of a lot of the NAACP legal aid. And like I say, like she delivered one hell of a lecture. I
Okay.
didn't even have many
Yeah.
things to say.
Mhm.
And this builds the premise for something and how our
Mhm.
laws exist.
Mhm.
And this is the one thing that I break down for her. Like I say, the most things about America itself. It's like, how do you establish precedent for justice when everything about this country is already so backwards in the first place? It's a stolen land, it's stolen people, stolen loan. It's gangsterism, you know what I'm saying? So it's
It
almost
takes a
like,
lot.
yeah, so
Takes a lot.
it's
A
like
lot of
I
work.
come in, you know what I'm saying? I kick in your door and I
Yes.
sit in your living room and then I say,
Yes.
all right, now we're gonna do everything fair, start now. And it's like, hey man, hold on,
Right,
what are you
right,
talking
right.
about? That's my argument against
Yeah.
this whole concept of blind justice, because that's
Mhm.
the blindness of the justice is that
Mhm.
we will live on the precedent of it. So
Mhm.
that's Kari
Yeah.
ideas of law
I hear
101,
you.
why people argue with me about that. And the
Yeah.
sugar law concept where you helped us
Mhm.
was back to like laws and ownership.
Mhm.
Maybe about 3-4 years ago now, maybe three, I don't know.
About 3.
Um
Yeah.
my whole
Not too
neighborhood, maybe like
yeah.
300 residents were sued,
Mhm.
to the point where like some of the people over here, like it was two seniors that had strokes and everything connected to this, and
Mhm.
they just didn't know um, what was going on. I was process served, and I remember specifically, if you ever been served, it's weird, but it's like,
Mhm.
it's like this older white lady walking from house to house serving
Mhm.
everybody,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yo, what's going on with this? First,
Mhm.
reading anything legally, if you ever seen anything legally, like economics, it's a lot of jargon in law. So it's hard to even interpret. You need to hire an attorney just to read what this
Yeah.
is.
A lot
You
of
got to hope
times.
that you trust that attorney where they know what it is and they don't know how to lie to you where it really is what it is. So I
Mhm.
reach out first to an attorney I know. And then we end up reaching out to Tanya as well, and it's all over a development that is taking place on the grounds of Highland Park in Detroit. And that development that now is built and everything, but a development between Highland Park and Detroit with like access to alleyways and like access to the easement of alleyways that
Mhm.
was granted to us as the traders. And they wanted to do also, like a lot of stuff in law, some other things about like what they wanted to warehouse and freedoms for what the warehouser
Mhm.
would be. And it was a collection of developers in this project with different people designing this project,
Mhm.
all making this warehouse, all for the thought process of this warehouse would be built and they didn't necessarily have an occupant yet, but millions of dollars were being granted between Highland Park and the city of Detroit. This was kind of one of the lasting legacies of then mayor of Highland Park, Mayor Herbert Yap,
Mhm.
for this Means Logistical Park that was
Mhm. Mhm.
first led by Eric Means. And he's a brother that had a whole lot to do with a lot of developments in and
Mhm.
around Detroit. But he passed away of a stroke at one point in time, and it slowed some of the development. Then his wife steps in,
Mhm.
kind of from the interest of the Means Logistical Group, and now this creates Means Logistical Park.
Mhm.
But behind this Means Logistical Park, a lot of corporate development dollars.
Mhm.
And I didn't like it because it was just suing everybody.
Mhm.
And I feel like the way to deal with the person instead of suing us is to at least engage with us. The argument is that for certain things in our country to move forward, lawsuits need to happen. Whether that be true or untrue, that's not the way that we move in our community.
Mhm.
And I definitely don't think that they had an idea that Detroit is different happened to be in this footprint of
Mhm.
things that they happen to sue. Because immediately I'm like, oh, we're going to call something together.
Mhm.
We're going to make some media and I'm going to push it and I'm going to promote it to the point where even to this day, that Sue Last Summer video still gets a lot of views. And when you look up Means Logistical Park, you're not going to see Means Logistical Park. You're going to see Sued Last Summer.
Mhm.
And you're going to see these testimonials of different people talking throughout. Tanya stood as our attorney
Mhm.
in this act. And like a lot of legal matters, winning or losing, it's hard to even abstractly say what it was.
Mhm.
What was asked for from the properties held between myself and my father, I'm sure they would say was ridiculous, but I see a lot of these things from a business mind is it's always acts of war. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I'll sue you for this just to see what type of response we get
Mhm.
from your community. And then next time I'll just go on and do it because I saw that this was a very disengaged community. It strategically targeted because they're very aware of the data over here of the income, the transientness in most residents. A
Mhm.
lot of the seniors never, like I can see that if I'm a 82-year-old woman and I've paid my taxes on
Mhm.
time, I
Mhm.
tithe, I do everything
Yeah.
right, and then one day I get some old white woman to knock on my door and then hand me something and say, "Here you go, you've been
Yeah.
served." Yeah, that can possibly cause you to have a stroke, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and that's where I was glad Detroit is different was standing in our community, but without your support and Sugar Law support, we wouldn't have been able to be even in sort of that position. So hence, even when somebody
Yeah.
from your campaign was like, "Hey, was you open to Tanya?" I'm like, "We forever indebted for Tanya for
Uh-huh.
standing with us." And even, and I'm not necessarily the easiest client either, because I'm gonna take this stuff to here because I feel like
Yes.
this is
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
public square. This is where we can talk about
We can
things,
talk
which
about it.
sometimes this is the other thing you learn about court. Court has a lot of they want to do stuff behind the scenes stuff. Nah, I
Mhm.
want to do something on the scene. I want things to be as public as possible. I want
Mhm.
things to be as in your face as possible.
Yep.
Win, lose, or draw, because I feel like social capital is always going to be the asset that I can bring to the table for anything. And it even
Right.
helped the brother, Mr. It helped the brother with the greenhouse that we kept talking about
Okay.
end up with a better deal out of it.
Right.
But sometimes with these corporate maneuverings, it's not as black and white as you think, like what you say. It's a lot of variance.
Absolutely. I
And
mean,
in
between the
that
court and
variance, you can
settlements
get
and
things.
ugh,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yep.
But I was glad to be able to help. Detroit is different and neighbors and,
Mhm.
I think that story is still being written.
I do too.
Okay.
I mean, because just in
It's
business, the
still being
place,
written.
in business, we went to New York and met
Mhm.
with the corporation there.
Mhm.
And, I mean, it's not like a formal meeting. We just went, and I know it
Mhm.
shocked the hell out of them.
Mhm.
And, Charles Williams went with us too. Shout out,
Okay.
Pastor Williams.
Right.
And I'm sure it shocked the hell out of them.
Mm.
You know, I had a lot
Mhm.
of stuff printed up. I had the QR code to the point
Mhm.
where the developers here called me immediately the next day, like, let's
Mhm.
do a meeting. And I brought my cameras and we videotaped
Yep,
that. And I know
yep,
they didn't
yep,
expect that.
yep.
And it slowed. Their development was supposed to open in July of basically we held up a lot of the opening of that for about a year and a half. And I just know
Mhm.
how money works in
Mhm.
business. So
Mhm.
I'm sure, that was a hell of a blow just
Mhm.
from a lot of art organizing
Mhm.
that took place. And I'm sure I'm gonna see some comments
Mhm.
possibly on this, but
Yeah.
that was a good act, and it also built a lot of camaraderie even in my community because
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
I'm not just the guy down the street with what you call it.
That's
It's like, oh
right.
yeah, that's my man that helped with the lawsuit thing. That's you know what I'm saying. I'll be in like Dollar Tree, and that's
That's right. That's
that's how
right.
some of the people will look at me,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is cool.
Yeah.
And being in this space, you're always like at the cusp of working with people
Mhm.
in these dire situations.
Mhm.
So now in the politics, it's in that same realm. And now knowing more of your backstory, what grounds you to still center you as you're taking on a whole lot of
Mm.
passion, emotion?
Mm.
Um, you're sometimes interacting with people in some of their times where, it's trepidatious.
Mm.
They're very, they're definitely in need and at times very fearful. How do you find your balance
Mm.
in this space?
Mm. Well, 3 things mainly. Well, 4. Um, faith, family, friends, future.
Mm,
Yeah. I look at it like that. I mean, certainly my faith, um, gives me strength, right? I mean, I believe in God, and I believe that God made us all equal, right? So we have certain things in the law that makes us all equal, right? We have,
we supposed to.
that's supposed to, right?
Mm,
We're still living up to the words of our Constitution. Beautiful document. We're still leaning into it and living up to it, trying to get there in this
mhm,
nation, right? But I mean, we have our United States Constitution, we have our state constitution, right? The city level, we have charter. And international, you have like your International Declaration of Human Rights. So you have tools in the law that, kind of provide some measure of equality, but at least from my faith perspective, you know, I believe God loves us all and wants us all to be treated equally. And God, I believe in hates injustice and oppression, right?
mm,
So that kind of deep spiritual grounding, it's just in me. Like if it's inequality, any just and injustice, I'm like, look, we all human here. We all bleed the same color. You know, we need to whatever's causing this, one person to be discriminated against or just, the quality of their life is just lesser than because of where they were born and their zip code and the color, the skin they were born into. Hey, that doesn't sit right with me. So
mhm,
I have a faith foundation that drives that. And then just every day, I mean, family and friends are everything. When you
mhm,
do this kind of work, you pour a lot out. I mean, you give a lot of yourself, a lot of your time, your energy. I mean, it can be fulfilling, but also draining. So you need people around you, good people who see you, who will encourage you to keep going when you're discouraged, who'll pour into you, who love you, who just make you laugh, right? So family and friends are everything to me. And the future, I'm motivated by the future.
mhm,
You know, I just think about, and I appreciate how you put a lot of things in context and history. But I think about the long road towards justice that we've been on as a people. I'm talking about Black people specifically. And it's been a couple 100 years, right?
mhm,
So it's not a sprint. And I think about the strength of our ancestors and those who came before us, and the tribulation and just the horrors they went through in order to secure additional rights. So you and I could be having this conversation here today. And how it didn't happen overnight, it just didn't. The law itself is, there are good things about precedent, there are bad things about precedent, right? but the law generally, is slow to change, and at least the theory of that is to have more stability and to be able to protect democratic rights and freedoms because you don't want the law to just kind of start changing arbitrarily and willy nilly at
Mhm.
some political person's whim, right? You want a steady foundation that you can rely on. So we're going to park that over there in terms of law and whatnot and the theory behind, you know, legal precedent. But I think about that, and I think about it like a race, like a relay race, right? So people came before me, they ran their race, and they passed the baton to me, right?
Mhm.
And you and others. And we have to do our part and we have to run our race, right? And we have to set the next person up, the next generation up of advocates, activists, and movement lawyers, and pass the baton to them. So even though some things are pretty messed up right now, you know, and not everything, I always tell people, and I have to learn this myself in this work, that you celebrate and take joy in every win, whether it's a big win, whether it's a small win, if it's a win, take joy in it.
Yeah.
That's really important so you don't burn out. But I think about the future. I think about, you know, if we continue this 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now, how much different things can be, and that optimism, that hope for a brighter future, that replenishes me. So I don't take the whole burden of changing everything on myself. I've had to grow into that, over these years. But I don't do that anymore. I look at it as I'm going to run my race as hard as I can. I'm going to give it all I got. I'm not gonna leave anything out there. I'm gonna put it all on the line. And when it's my turn to pass the baton, I'll pass the baton to the next, knowing that I've did my part, to set up the next generation. And one day we'll get there. One day we will have that more perfect union. Now, some people might say, well, how do you know? Well, I don't. So who
And,
knows what the future really holds? But I'm hopeful looking at how far we've come. Now I hope the pace of it, good Lord, comes a lot faster. I hope this more perfect union is not another 400 years off, right?
mhm.
But yeah, I have hope for the future. And those things kind of ground me and motivate me to keep going.
I definitely agree with what you said as I'm asked some of those same questions
Yeah.
about this work, and I definitely don't think that it's not it's not like win and loss
No,
as much
no,
as it's about hearts and minds, I
that's right.
believe. And
It's a
the sea of
process.
those hearts and
Hmm.
minds, it gathers over years
Hmm.
before that brings about a lot of the change.
Hmm.
Um, Cause like we say, it's so many laws on the books
So,
to the
so
point where it
much.
would be
Yeah.
exhaustive to enforce all these laws.
It's a lot. And when
But
you
the laws that are more so paid attention to, like,
Mhm.
this past summer went after in response back to like reactionary
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
response to a block party shooting. It
Mm.
was like, okay, let's do more ordinances anytime you want to do a public gathering outside. So
Mhm.
immediately now police officers are looking to shut down any outdoor fair, which I think that that's a classic in response to. So
Exactly.
now,
Mhm.
for one instance, and when I talk a lot about violence in our country, it's like, let's be honest, we have a violent society. A,
We do.
it's
It's
more guns
rooted in
than
violence.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
It's
historically,
so deep.
it's more guns than
Mhm.
people in America.
Mhm.
So when that people think that I'm morbid when I say this, I'm like, I'm surprised not a lot more shootings because just per
Mm.
capita, I mean, it's
Mm.
a, you know, you know, owning a gun, you are saying to yourself, there's a premise for me murdering somebody. And I
That's
don't
a
look
premise.
at it
Right.
another way. Like that's car logic. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I don't
Right.
look at it like, no, but it's for protection. But
Mhm.
like to use this, I'm
Mhm.
murdering someone. It's
Yeah.
not a a movie where it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot somebody in the leg," and then they're
Right.
gonna be like, "You know what? I shouldn't have did what made you wanna shoot me. My bad. Thank you. I'm gonna go on and go to the hospital."
Well, you might, right? You might.
No,
Yeah.
that's
You're being nice.
the probability, no, is go no.
I know.
You're
Yeah.
shooting to kill.
Mhm.
So, if it's more guns in America than people, that means that Americans have a justifiable reason for murder throughout. But in that, now you're going to have a fast response where now police officers are overextended to look at
Mhm.
any public gathering,
Mhm.
and public gatherings in the summer are one of the key things that I definitely am heart, is
Yeah.
deep in my heart, and it
Yeah.
builds community.
It does.
So
It does.
now, in response to something that happened here
Right.
that possibly could have found other resolutions, we're
Mhm.
going to enforce something here.
Mhm.
And it's going to take resources, it's going to impact community,
Right.
and even the capacity of what the block club fill out form and
Mhm.
police officers patrolling the neighborhood.
Mhm.
That you may not have money, or
Yeah.
that police precinct may not have capacity to do something like
Right.
that.
Right.
What's going to happen? These are things that I think as state representative you can help at least add a light to, because in response it's just seen as, hey, we don't want people going crazy shooting people, and it's
Right.
like, okay, possibly
Right.
it's a better resolution than to
Exactly.
strip community from things
You
like that.
always want to be careful when you're restricting freedoms. Always be careful with that. That's what I say.
and and these are definitely some of the things.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
with that, as we close out, I don't know what I guess like classic I guess classically politicians have platforms and agendas
Mm.
that they're running on and
Yeah.
ideas, but
Yeah.
the classic, what are you going to do in your first 90 days? I
Oh,
mean,
no,
that's
not that one.
that's corny. But I will say
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
You have one hell of a team of a lot of activists that are campaigning with you, walking with
Yes.
you for the
Yes, I
support
love it.
that you've shown for them.
Mhm.
What's some of the people that are campaigning with you?
Yeah.
What are they speaking to
Yeah.
the excitement in your work
Mhm.
when you reach Lansing? What are they looking forward to?
Ooh, well, one thing I've been saying, and people laugh, but I'm serious when I say it. It's like, look, this is our office. It's not about me going to Lansing. We are going to Lansing as a
Mhm,
community. So every organization, every person that I've had the honor and privilege of working with and serving, I'm like, hey, we are taking our work to the next level. And I view the seat like that, and I hope that doesn't sound corny, but yeah, I don't care if it sounds corny,
mhm,
right? It's not. It is, mm, a seat. I'm an elected representative, right? But that seat belongs to the community, and it belongs to the people, and I'm just looking forward to continuing to live that out, but specifically to your question, what are people talking about, you know?
mhm,
And I'm proud to say the organizations that have endorsed me, I don't seek everybody's endorsement. That's not my strategy. The things that I'm fighting for, some groups we're not aligned, right? So,
mhm.
the groups that have endorsed me, and I'm honored to receive their endorsement along with just talking with people out in the community. Housing is at the top of everybody's list, honestly. The high cost of living, you know, um, wanting the cost of living, being able the rent being so, high, people not being able to purchase homes or qualify for mortgages, and then when you get somewhere, the kind of abuse that a lot of, tenants are experiencing, and even homeowners, right? When we talk about who owns what, right? If your mortgage isn't if you still have a mortgage, right? That bank owns the home, okay?
Yeah, man.
As a don't you'll see who has the rights if you miss those
I love
payments,
that you said
okay?
that, and I was trying to let you cook right there, but
Even
I
if you
gotta
make
step
the
in.
payments, if the bank has a
I
problem with
I gotta
you,
step in, and that's
yes,
where, like, I talk to a lot of
okay.
people. It's like it's
Mhm,
not your home unless you own it outright, and
mhm,
then
that's
even then, as
pay
we've
those
seen,
taxes.
yes. So it's like this whole
Yes,
concept of ownership, and that's why my
yes,
distorted. That's why I say this ain't. the capitalism I think a lot of people argue against being from business school. This is another distorted form because corporations have so many pockets to exploit and pull from systems. And then people will argue, no, that's what capitalism is. I'm like, that's not what Adam Smith was talking about in Wealth of Nations. This is some old other distorted stuff, like where technically the amount of consideration that you're offered from a corporate lens with resources. And we talk about just even on a small level, you know what I'm saying? It's like the person that probably doesn't need a free meal, you know, you too, meaning like you at your family reunion. If I don't know if Beyonce walks into your family reunion, your family is probably going to get up and give her a free plate.
I'm sure. Right.
Because it's like, oh, Beyonce here with us. And in reality, you need to turn around and say, yo, Beyonce, you kind of need to give us 2 stacks for that plate.
Exactly.
We're not conditioned to think this way
I hear you.
in our society because it's the leverage of, well, if they have more resources, the thought processes will get more resources from them. It's the idea and implication. Hence, that's where I'm excited about it because you stood against what I feel like a lot of corporations in this quote unquote revitalization of Detroit have exploited the resources of Detroit at the extent of, I don't even know if they're doing business, because if I have to incentivize people this much to come do business with me, that ain't necessarily business. You know,
It's something else.
if these corporations are like going back to some 90s, if this is an episode of Family Matters, the corporations are Laura and Detroit is Urkel. We are giving the whole, we're giving everything to get them. So it's like by the time Laura's like, all right, Steve, you know what I'm saying? After after I've tried everybody, I've dated everybody. Okay, this is season 20.
Exactly.
I guess Steve's still around. All right, come on, Steve. Let's go on a date. It's like, if you got to do that, I don't even know if this is a real relationship at this point. You still want the machine to turn this into Stefan. I'm saying do business where you really want to do business. And stop taking resources from a city that's already strapped and not pouring back into our communities. It's a spit in the face that people are old and have, you know, those overassessed taxes, the way they just make it sound, it's just like overassessed taxes. Overassessed taxes mean people lost their homes. My community will forever be changed because of money that was stolen.
We lived through it.
And
we have these neighborhoods change. I mean, whole neighborhoods, you know, where we used to run and play and there were houses in a row. You didn't have all these gaps.
Exactly. And not to
vacancies,
mention,
you know, until that foreclosure crisis hit us.
I know.
Caused by
predatory
corporations.
Caused by a lot of mortgages from one of the
predatory
businesses.
Predatory instruments.
One of the businesses that has been given a lot of access to a lot of the land in the downtown development area. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this is a reality. You know, and they make it so flip it, you know, our corporate counsel, meaning the lawyer on behalf of Detroit, it's like, oh, you can't do anything over assessed taxes, and hence that's why you being in office will definitely reconstruct that conversation, because it's like, it's tough luck because our Michigan charter must change to give money to citizens, but we have a Michigan charter that can give millions and billions to billionaires. That don't even make any type of sense on paper. Hence, this ain't capitalism. I don't know what it is. I know it's definitely, we are incentivizing too much into these corporations.
That's right. And there's research, there's tons of research and studies, you know, that point out or that raise the red. You don't even need that. You just need common sense.
You just need common sense.
You just need to look around. But if you want to go there, there's plenty of research, right? That just really picks apart, you know, what is the ROI on all these tax abatements and tax incentives here. And for me, you know, going into Lansing here, you know, one of the centering principles is, you know, public money should be used for the public good, not transferred for private wealth, right? If you say it like that, no one would just say, of course, I think public money should be used to build private wealth, you know. They're not going to say it like that.
It's these distorted public-private partnerships. It's a reason why one of the most profitable stadiums in America is Cowboy Stadium. And it's a reason why Jerry Jones, that owns the Dallas Cowboys, didn't want a dime from the state of Texas, Fort Worth, or Dallas to build that stadium, because he wants to keep that money.
Mhm.
If I gotta give
Mhm.
you $1 million, that ain't even, it's not
Mhm.
really business.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
give me the money to do my business,
Mhm.
I'm gonna take risks that I never would take with my own money. And that's
Mhm.
another reason why it's bad
Well,
for business.
well,
Because it's like I could care less. This ain't really my money. This is tax money from Detroit. And these people beg me to come here to do business.
well.
Stephen Ross, that's a part of some of these developments, is a hell of a developer in Miami.
Mhm. Mhm.
And guess what's not happening in South Beach, Miami? South Beach, Miami ain't giving people nothing for free.
Right.
So you
Right.
shouldn't come to Detroit to get free stuff.
Come
I don't
on
care if
now.
you are friends with the Illages. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? So it's like, it's
Exactly.
goofy stuff like that that makes it like this ain't business.
No.
And it's coming on the backs of taxpayers that already are getting told we can't get paid back for money that was stolen from us, because overassessed ain't really what I call it. It was stolen money.
Well,
Stolen money. But we can give money from people that already got stolen from to corporate
well.
interest. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's goofiness like this
Mhm.
that makes people say, okay, I'm apathetic to the whole system. So hence,
Yeah.
it's a refreshing to see
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
such as yourself that has been in the fight. It's not like
Mhm.
you're doing this
Mm-mm.
as a talking point.
No.
You've stood
Mm-mm.
in the fight, and that's a
Absolutely.
reason to vote.
That's
And
right.
and I also, and this is what definitely makes a lot of the OGs mad, I
Uh-huh.
understand the apathy of it, because the
Yeah.
instrument, like a lot of
Yeah.
tools, need to be reshaped.
You know what? I agree with you there.
Mhm.
I agree with you there. I mean, there is a lot of hurt,
Mhm.
a lot of pain.
Mhm.
Um, Detroiters have been done wrong, right? I
Very
mean,
much
we have
so.
our little social contract, right? Where you, concerned citizen, you do your part, you pay your taxes, and in return, you're supposed to get these great city services and, investment into the commons or whatever. I can understand when you look around and you wonder, are both ends of the social contract being upheld here, right?
Yeah.
When you see a disproportionate amount of investment in certain parts of the city, but my tax dollar is over here, and I'm not going to pick on anybody's city council district today,
Yeah.
but let's just say more neglected,
Yeah.
disinvested part of the city. He's like, well, my taxes are going to have create this wonderful environment in certain areas. How's that impacting me?
Yeah.
What do I get out of it?
And
We
it's
try to get CBAs to address that, but that's the fight, right? That's the
and
fight.
like I say,
Yeah.
the key fight is, if you wanna do business, like,
Right.
that's why I just
Right.
come back to the business argument.
Right.
If it's a good business decision, you put your own money up, and then they turn around and say, "Well, the barriers of entry are so high," and da 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 da. So it's like, that's
Right.
even higher for
Right.
me as a real small business person.
Hello. Right.
So it's like,
Right.
if it's good money making sense, then you
Mhm.
should do it to make profit. If
Right.
not, if I gotta incentivize
Mhm.
you to death, you
Right.
don't really wanna be there in the first
Right.
place. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? I
Mhm.
mean, if
Right.
if it takes all of that incentive,
Mhm.
then did you really wanna come? So why
Exactly.
don't we dance with who already wanna dance with us? So
Exactly.
with that,
Shout out to the food co-op.
definitely, definitely.
One example of incentives going right.
Yes. So with that, we're gonna get to a close. Um I usually have the classic questions, but I want to
Mhm.
change this around this time
Okay.
to and you spoke of Isaac.
Yeah, I miss him.
Um I want to
Renaissance class
talk
of
I just want
93.
to
Isaac was 93.
ask this question then. I usually ask about, like, okay, is there a politician when people are running, it's like, who
Yeah.
did you like? And you spoke to Isaac.
Yeah.
Is there like a piece of legislation that you currently like that has been enacted,
Hmm.
you've seen possibly grow or whatever, that you say, this is the style of writing and the type of
Hmm.
legislation that I would like to move forward. I appreciated this, just for
Mhm.
us to kind of unpack what
Mm.
your approach in legislation would be like.
Hmm. Something good that's passed recently.
It could be recent. I mean,
Oh,
it could
okay.
be old. It could be recent. It's up to you.
Hmm. Can it be pending?
Yeah, it can be pending.
Hmm. Well, one thing, there's a lot I can choose from here.
Mhm.
But one thing, I'll pick one thing that I definitely have my eye on because I'm working on it, and that is the right to counsel, a statewide right to counsel.
Share what's that?
Yeah. So in 2022, Detroiters, advocates, community residents were able to come together and get a law passed in the city of Detroit that mandates a right to free legal representation for low to moderate income Detroiters facing eviction. And again, some of the things that we've just
Uh,
touched on,
all
we
right, I
couldn't e
gotta I gotta
c
point this out,
yeah,
and I wanted you to
yeah,
share that, but just
yeah.
so that you all are watching this, I'm gonna say it more
Mhm,
in Kari talk.
mhm,
Before that in 2022, in most places, back to what I say,
mhm,
our laws are based on who owns
mhm.
things.
Yeah,
So if you were getting evicted and you would show up, the idea of having an attorney in some ways would
didn't
be looked
happen.
at as not just it was wrong.
Mhm. Like, "What did
And
you
it's like,
do?
I'm
Get
getting
out."
evicted
Mhm.
and I can't have representation when obviously the person evicting you got representation,
Yes.
which you would think back to 2 and 2 should equal 4. And logically, if they got an attorney, you should get an attorney. But
No.
so
Live
please,
through that. So when I
yes.
started doing representing, tenants and homeowners facing eviction, this was back in 2009.
Hmm.
So individuals who were being evicted, the rate of representation was about at 4%, and property owner representation about at 98%.
And also, let's
Yeah.
say this logically: if you're getting evicted, you probably don't have retainer
No.
money for an attorney.
No.
So
Yeah.
let me frame that even
Right.
furthermore. And it's like, well,
Right.
why don't you get your own attorney? So all
Right.
right.
Right. But so, yeah, let's kinda take the next step there, like, "Yeah, why don't you get your own attorney?" Okay. So, right now, I mean, we have a constitutional right to legal representation throughout the
Mhm.
nation. If you're charged with a crime, if you're accused of a crime, and your liberty is at stake, and you can't afford to hire an attorney, then you have a legal right. The state will provide or the
Mhm.
government will provide legal representation for you
Yep.
because it's considered that important, right? Your freedom, your liberty. So that right exists in the criminal context. And it hasn't been around that long, only about 50 years, honestly,
You
right?
got that
So
right.
not that long in the
Yes.
in the
So
larger
a lot
scheme
of
of things,
those
right?
less have traveled, a lot of those lynchings,
Mm, right.
it's a reason why they call it a public lynching. My bad.
Mhm. So we're still getting there. It's that more perfect union, right?
Mhm.
So we do have this concept, this right that exists in the criminal context, but there's nothing prior 2022 in the civil context. It's just kind of more like a charitable, aspirational endeavor. Okay. But
Mhm.
the state doesn't really have a lot of skin in the game to make sure that property owners, homeowners, tenants who may have been wronged or exploited, that they're able to defend themselves in court.
Mhm.
And evictions are what's called summary proceedings, which means fast, basically. Okay. In and out. We need to get
Mhm.
this property back into the owner's hands as soon as possible. That's just, a really, I
Yes.
don't know, casual way of talking, but we're on Detroit is different. But
Mhm.
essentially summary proceedings in and out, so it moves super fast, right?
Mhm.
So, against the backdrop of all our city went through, where nearly a quarter of our property, and our residents experienced eviction and foreclosure over a decade. I mean, who doesn't know somebody, you know, who hasn't been evicted? How many people in Detroit, lives, families, generational wealth has just been wiped out because they couldn't fight back,
Yeah.
right? So against ah, all of this, all the sad, sad stories, tragic stories in our city, people came together to have this basic right to push back, to fight back, to at least let my voice and my side of the story be heard. Because if you don't know the language of the law, you're sunk pretty
A-
much, you
And
know.
and also the tough thing about that, like
Mhm,
a lot of the work you do,
mhm.
which I applaud, like I say, you're dealing with people and sometimes they're some of their most dire times
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
obviously a
Tough
lot of the people
situation.
even advocating for this may not have even experienced this personally, but
Mhm.
know of or formally experienced this
Right.
because that's such a shameful
It's a lot of shame. So, a lot of we
experience that people go through and what it
traumatizing.
is, and then that balance of like the empowerment of so many of the landlords,
Yeah,
um and what that is when you look at so much of what has happened.
that's right.
So That is only fair.
That's only fair. It's giving you a meaningful day in court,
Mhm.
not a, you know, paper punching day in court, right? But a
Yeah.
meaningful chance to have your case heard. So we were able to get that law passed in 2022, and now, it's still a pretty new law.
Mhm.
Still working through some kinks in the implementation and the
Yeah.
funding, but it's way better than it used to be.
Yeah.
And we were able to get a bill introduced at the state level to provide this basic level of fairness and due process to citizens throughout Michigan. So, I mean, the bill has been introduced, but it hasn't passed. So
There you go.
that's a huge, huge systems change. That would
Mhm.
be a huge system change, not only for Detroit, but for the entire state of Michigan, where there's a disparity of power,
Yeah.
where the homeowner, where the tenant, where the land contract holder, um, is able to present their side and their evidence and really have a meaningful day in court, you know.
Yep.
So that is one that's definitely on my radar. I'm already working in community on it. So I want to see that get across the finish line, certainly.
Thank you so much. This was a fun one,
Yes.
but also very informative. And I hope that anyone, definitely,
Mhm.
District 7,
D7.
you already know where I would be voting if I was over that way. So I hope that this empowered some of the people in your space.
Yes.
Couple of days, that election is coming up.
Mhm.
Also, I'm excited locally. It is our Detroit School Board on there too. You all should know some people for school board that you want to support because there's a lot of things happening
Mhm.
in DPSCD that we should be aware of.
And don't forget the judges. Back
Oh,
of the ballot. Don't forget those
oh yeah,
nonpartisan
many,
races.
many,
So
many of the
important.
judges. Yes,
So important.
let's put it like
Right?
this.
County judges, Supreme Court
Hmm.
judges. Don't forget the judges. That's another systems change
Yeah.
piece. Very important.
You don't think
The
about judges
judiciaries.
until you before one.
Exactly.
That's not when you want to start
No,
thinking about them.
no, not at that moment. Not at that moment.
Hoping it's like, man, I hope they woke up
Yes.
good today. I hope the
Right.
line at Starbucks was good.
You
Oh,
need wise people in community,
mhm.
from community,
Yep.
in those seats.
I understand the nuance of it.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.